So we've heard now from Lee about his own personal perspective, but now we're going to introduce Rebecca Belofsky Shuer, and she is going to talk about what it's like living with someone with hoarding disorder. She is a graduate of Smith College, where she gained an interest in identifying and narrative development. She is a certified wellness recovery action plan facilitator. After servicing children and families touched by autism spectrum disorder for nearly a decade and transitioning through the loss of both of her parents, she joins Mutual Support Consulting as a relationship facilitator. Rebecca knows firsthand what it's like to live with someone who has been finding keeping issues. With her husband's stuff became too much, she spoke up and the healing work began. Today, she shares her side of their recovery story and hopes to give strength to the often silenced partners of this struggle. Rebecca is an outspoken peer support advocate and educator, sharing her perspectives in print and on television, and has addressed audiences from New Bedford, Massachusetts to Sydney, Australia. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome Rebecca.
Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me now? Sounds like it. Okay, great. You heard about Lee's identity and how much a part of him these things were. I'll lower this so I can see everybody. I had a very different view of Lee when I met him in 2003. He had a lot of stuff. He lived in what I call a rock boy apartment. They were about 3 musicians in their late 20s, maybe 4 people then. And stuff was everywhere. There was a 33-foot-long hallway when you walked into the apartment, and it was cluttered on every side, basically. So you had a little path you could squeeze through and go in, and they had what was called a museum room in the apartment. Now, little did I know that what was in the museum room belonged to my husband solely. I thought it was the collective apartment things. So we got to know each other. I fell in love. I told people this is someone that I feel like I can speak to 24 hours a day for the rest of my life. We had the glow of new love. I was living in the apartment with these other people now, again, just happily thinking, this chaotic apartment is the Rock Boy apartment. That's going to change one day. So Lee and I became seriously involved, and we decided we were going to get married. I was very excited at the prospect of having a new home. We were going to get a great studio apartment. That's really one room, not a big room, for us and our cat. So I said to Lee, wow, okay, this is exciting. We're going to move into our own place. What do you have to take? And he said, everything. Everything in this apartment that 3 or 4 people were living in belonged to my future husband. And I was absolutely shocked. I mean, there were things in there like boxes and boxes of 8-track tapes that someone said, Lee, I'm getting rid of these. I want to give you some. And he said, oh, great, can I pick out a few? They said, no, the condition is you must take all of these boxes of 8-track tapes. So instead of saying, no, thank you, there's probably 3 in there that I'd like, he took them all. In the hallway they went. We had boxes of bobbleheads that were coming with us, tubes of posters. There was even a wheelchair coming to our house for no reason that I could discern. Tons more stuff was coming, plus whatever the average person might have. This is on top of all the regular items that you've acquired over your life that are used on a daily basis. Well, we had all that, and he had other stuff. So I was getting a little worried because it certainly felt to me like he needed an 18-wheeler to get what he was bringing to our new home. And there's what I was packing, because my anticipation was that we would become married and build a life together, start afresh, buy things together, create a shared identity. So this was a daunting thought when I realized he needs a big truck to come, and I'm just kind of stuffing things in the back of a car. I was not at all prepared for what I was getting, and when Lee told me that he was taking everything, I couldn't believe it. It just did not register. It didn't. It couldn't be true. but it was. He meant it quite literally. So once all the stuff was there, it was really difficult. You've seen a few pictures of that apartment, and the thing that always strikes me when I see those photos is it looks to me like that's a part of moving in. You see the boxes. I will show you in a minute exactly where things were that belonged to me. But when I look at those photos, I look and I think, that's not a living situation, that's a moving process that kind of got stuck, didn't go anywhere. So I felt very sad. All this stuff came into the apartment. It was small. I got mad. I got sad, I got mad, I got depressed. I went through all those stages, kind of the grief kind of stages, and had a lot of processing and back and forthing to do. Now, I would love to stand up here and tell you that we got along great through all this, and it was easy because our love was so great, but the love was still great, but the daily life aspects were insurmountable. And I will explain to you why I found it so hard to live with all of this. This is my dining room. That is my very freshly married dining room. It stayed that way. There's no place for a table. So that's the dining room. I don't know how you would feel if you woke up and suddenly your dream of this, glorious new dining room was turned into this. And I had no control in my own space because the person with all the stuff controls the space. So I started to wither. I started feeling very small. Again, this is trying to enter the kitchen. That might be the kitchen, a piece of it. Another part of our house. I look at these and I don't know how we lived. I don't know how we actually had functioning lives with going to work and having friends and things like that. This was the bed. Our uncle built us a platform bed because we had no place in the studio to store this stuff. So all of that under there is Lee's belongings. And I look at all these pictures and I don't see me represented at all. I don't seem to exist in our home. Now some people are okay with living with clutter. I grew up as a chronically disorganized person. I do share that visual map that Dr. Frost was speaking of. And so when I was little in my house, I had everything important to me in the middle of my bedroom floor, which drove my dad nuts. My mom said, just let her shut the door and walk by it. So we tried to manage that way. And they said to me, how can you find anything with it all in the middle of your floor? Precisely. Everything I need is in that pile. And like Randy was describing, I did know. I had a passport, everything important. Other people might line it up. I, for whatever reason, didn't grow up with a sense of categorization and organization. So the chronicle disorganization I was used to. And people often say, when you moved in with Lee, how could you not know? It looked messy. His room looked messy. I threw clothes on the floor in my room growing up. I climbed over clothes in his room. It didn't really register what the real deeper problem was. So this kitten is Kaya. She we call Clutter Kitten. Her catchphrase is, please don't clean up. Because if there is a pile of stuff, I don't care if it's spiky objects, anything, she will be sitting in it. People, too, can be comfortable in clutter. I am not like that. Now, Lee will tell you he was not comfortable and not happy with the clutter and disorganization in the house. But to me, he seemed like Kaya. He seemed quite content. Me, however, I had the horrified look of Honeybee. She hates clutter. It is stressful. Like, you look at this cat and you can see the terror in her face when the room gets like that. So we have one cat who likes to sit in it, happily purring away, and then this other one that was more like me. Very difficult. I had a strong identity as an artist before we got together, and I made the mistake of combining my art supplies with Lee's once we moved in. I thought, this is great. He introduced me to his parents, so I am going to move everything in together because we're on a roll. I did not realize that in doing so, I would lose control over my art supplies, and they would be buried with other things that we didn't get to use on a regular basis. So something that was really exciting to me and such a good feeling, became really depressing. Like I had this great vision, we're gonna be doing art together, and then it got buried by all this stuff we weren't even using. It was such a matter of control in my life that I felt like I did not have the freedom to wear what I wanted to wear to work. Because if Lee had been out acquiring, chances are that the new stuff, exciting stuff he got from the free pile or the tag sales or the friends, it landed on my things. So maybe I had a shirt that I wanted to wear to work. Guess what? I get up in the morning, it's buried. I unbury it, it's covered in, you know. So it was really debilitating to me. I was feeling crippled on a daily basis. This is how I felt, insignificant. Too small or unimportant to be worth consideration. I felt meaningless in our home. I looked around, I couldn't see myself represented anywhere. It was all piles of things that came before me, had nothing to do with me. And this was my new marital home, and I wasn't there. I wasn't there at all. Well, I'll tell you, he did come home that day, and I said, yes, please, I need you to get help. It was very scary for me to talk to him about it because I had been taught you don't give ultimatums. But at the same time, I knew I need to save myself, and I want to be with Lee, so what am I going to do? Well, I did give him that ultimatum. It was with a lot of thought, and I was extremely relieved and terrified when I found that number for him to call. Happy that there was help offered, but scared to death he wouldn't accept it. Now, I thought this should be a really easy choice, me or the stuff. It seemed so easy, but you know what? I could feel that it wasn't going to be that easy, and that was a horrible feeling to be faced with. So he came home, and yes, I was the nagging wife. I was sick of his stuff. Divorce was possible. It's me or the stuff. I did say that. There's not enough room here for me, though. Can you, will you make room for me? That was what I was really saying with that ultimatum. It wasn't like throw the stuff out. It was, where is my place here? Because I can't find room for me. You saw the cat, the little cat that couldn't get in between anything. Imagine how I felt trying to cook, live, have friends over, do art, make things. It was extremely destructive to me. Now, I had the vision on the left, those jewels. That's what I anticipated. That's what I wanted from our married life. But yet here I was, stuck in this rusty pile of mess. Now that's just a metaphor. The things, we had clean things, there was fine. It wasn't, our home was not, it was not a danger to live in, but it was extremely uncomfortable. And I knew to get where we were gonna go, we were gonna have to cross this whole mound of sharp, ouchy things to get there. I knew it wasn't going to be an easy process. I came to it with a lot of my own baggage. I can't sit and tell you that I came in and I was this fresh, crystal clear person. No, I had baggage. I had my own complicated issues with stuff. I was a shopaholic. I used to joke about retail therapy, but I don't laugh at it anymore. There's nothing funny about the debt that I ensued in trying to keep myself going, and I shopped to get a high. I would wheeze in a store. I'd actually start to have an asthma attack at the joy from acquiring. So I had worked on that. I came around my own ways to deal with that. I stopped the spending. I started clipping things out of catalogs and pretending I was going to buy them. Then I stopped receiving catalogs at all. So I had been through my own process. I also had had a relationship about 15 years prior to meeting Lee with another collector. So you might say I collect collectors. At the time in my relationship then, though, it didn't trouble me so much because I was dealing with my own personal issues, that the other person's things were just kind of an aside to me. So this was not something I dealt with back then. But when I got together with Lee, there was a certain familiarity and a comfort level, which I didn't think of then, but it felt kind of like home. It didn't feel like a great home, but it still had a certain home appeal to it. So I knew that Lee had this problem with acquiring and keeping. I knew that it was difficult to master that. So I knew that there was the addictive kind of nature, the highs and the lows, and you just get into this vicious cycle. I'm sad because I'm not collecting, so I'm going to go collect and feel better. So I knew it would be a struggle, and I wasn't sure where we were going to go. But fortunately for me, Lee decided he did want help, and we both had to go on our together ways, but separately. It's kind of like we were holding hands, I see it, with two sidewalks parallel, because he had his own recovery work to do, and I had mine, and we could help each other, but we really had our own individual work to take care of on this subject. For this journey to be successful for us, it was really necessary for both of us to appreciate the struggle on both sides of it. There was no right, no wrong, just a commitment to us getting better. I didn't say, Lee, you need to get better. We need to work on this. We need to work on it together. I had very strong feelings of anger and resentment, but to get to success, I had to find a place for those tough feelings to go. I found that talk therapy was extremely helpful to me. It's great to have friends you can talk to, but the danger that runs there is they can say, oh, what a mess. What are you doing with this person? Can't we just throw it out? And other things that might harm a relationship. But I found in speaking with a therapist, it was a great place for me to take all those ugly, horrible feelings and share them there. It was safe. It was not going to come back and dirty my marriage. I wasn't going to keep going in and out of yelling at Lee. I had a safe place to take all those horrible, ugly feelings and thoughts that I was living with and deposit them there and process them with someone who did not have any investment in my situation, which was superb. That objectiveness was really what I needed. Friendship and supports of family are great, but for me, it would not have been the same without a therapist, because I really just needed that clean space to go to where no one was going to feed me back things that could interfere with our progress. So I had faith in Lee's work. He, as he told you, was doing the study, and he was slowly getting rid of things. It was not fast enough for me. It never could have been fast enough for me because I didn't want all that stuff to begin with. But we were doing this together. It's a hilly road. It was not linear. We had our ups and our downs, and some days were good, and some days were not so good. But I kept supporting him. I knew the progress would not be steady, but we were on a path, and I had to have faith in that path. There was a constant stream of items coming into the house. That was the most troubling part to me, besides all the things that we actually had to store. Plus, Lee had the antiques booth he was paying to have. And also, when we moved into this apartment where you see everything, he was paying $50 a month for a storage office, too. So money's going out. And the house is full, chock full, and stuff kept coming in. But it was the free pile on the curb. I didn't spend any money. Or, oh, it only cost $1. That irritated me to no end because all I just saw was stuff. And every time Lee came into the house, I felt this panic, this gasp holding my breath, like, what is he going to bring in today? Now, you saw that dome hairdryer. We had three of them in our apartment, all for the sake of future artwork. They were not for sitting in. They were just stored, like everything you saw. Like we've talked, it was not being used. It was all just sitting there. It was really important for me to draw boundaries. And we fortunately moved into a 3-bedroom house after the studio. And Lee culled more as we were moving in there. But I said to him, okay, this is great because now there's space. You have your own office. Anything you can fit in there, you can keep if you can close the door on it. So that was the deal we made. Some days it worked out well, and other days it got a little iffy if things started edging around the house. We call them circles of hell that develop on and off throughout our life together, where things, suddenly there's a pile and it grows, because once you put something down, it's so easy just to put another thing down. But his acquiring was less, and that made me very happy. I realized that I had not been putting time into my relationships, my friendships. It was a secret. Everything we were living in was a secret. When our families came over, we hid things. We might drape a sheet over something that's hiding a ton of stuff. If they had ever opened a closet to put a coat in, I would have been devastated because you can't imagine what was in the closet. So I wasn't having people over to the house. We were embarrassed. We were working on it. I was really putting myself on hold for all that time. And it was important for me to take control. So one day while Lee was at work, I invited a few friends over, friends that I knew cared about me and us and weren't judgmental. And they came over, 4 people, but there was no room to sit. They sat on those piles that you saw. We had a futon. It was covered in stuff. Everything had stuff in it. So all my friends were kind of sitting on top of the mounds, and we're managing to have a great social hour. And Lee came home, and the feeling was, what the hey? What are we doing here? People are sitting on piles of stuff. This is not how we want to live. It was such an absurd sight to see your friends sitting on your belongings in the living room that I think that was a moment of great clarity for both of us, like, we need to do something. So the vision on the left is what I felt like. It was very bleak for me for many years in our marriage with all this stuff coming in. And though Lee was excited about all those purchases, I never was. I didn't want to talk about the things. I didn't want to hear about the new acquisition. I just wanted it gone. So I had this horrible feeling inside for many years. What I wanted to get to was that picture of Jules. That's the vision I originally had when we got together. And that was the goal. I wanted to feel that way about our home. And it has taken about 10 years. I've had 2 New Years, 2 years now that I've been happy in my home. And we've been together for 11 years. That's a lot of years to be unhappy in your home, 9 years. So I'm really glad that we pursued it, and Lee said yes to getting help. Sit, stay, and heal. That's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to leave. Now, I knew there were a few things that could happen when I approached Lee with the question, will you make room for me? He could say no, and then I would be alone. And I contemplated that because I would rather be healthy and alone than with someone but losing my identity and feeling shriveled up. I had another vision where he would say, yes, we can work on it, and that's what we did, fortunately. But the other option he could have chosen was, no, we're just going to stay like this. And fortunately, he wanted the healing, so we were able to go down that path. And this is what the living room looks like on most good days. We do have our bad moments. Honeybee is very happy in the middle of the floor with no clutter. The biggest question I seem to get is, how did you not know? And I think, again, I just assumed that grand assumption, this must belong to everyone else's in this house. It just didn't occur to me. So that's one of those things. You should find out what you're getting into. But the other point is, though, what if I had known? What if I had known? Would I have gone there with Lee? I like to think that I would, because none of our relationship for me was about the stuff. But if I had known what the process would be, it's scary for me to think that I might have lost out on this relationship with the most fabulous person I've ever known because of stuff. Because of stuff that he felt was part of his identity. And I've said, I could be on a deserted island with you with no stuff and be thrilled for the rest of my life. So the stuff definitely complicated it, and I'm really glad that we worked it out. And there's hope. There's really hope for everyone out there. I hope you can feel it. Thank you so much.